Dear Mr. or Mrs. Listener, we accept the fact that you're going to sacrifice a whole hour to listen to this podcast, but we think you are crazy. In the simplest terms, you see us as you want to see us. A Ninja Turtle, a Jedi, a redhead, a mic. Sincerely yours, Redhead Family Therapy Guy, and a mic.
Don't you forget about the bugger. There's a walk on by. You better listen to this thing. It's gonna be great. All right, here we are again for another podcast. We're so grateful to have you with us, have you listening and watching. This is the Redhead Family Therapy Guy.
And a mic.
And I'm John.
And I'm Michael.
And we're so glad that you're here for this discussion today. We've got a good one. I'm excited about this one, Michael.
Yeah.
Bicycles. We get to talk movies and we get to talk cycling.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about this. And we decided that with this podcast that folks would get to be exposed to some of our exploits in our 2-day or what? How many days was it? 4 days? 3 days? How many days was it? 4 days? Journey?
4 days. Our cycling adventures.
It was awesome. And we're going to have more because we're going to be talking. So you're probably going to be hearing this a little late, but we're talking about our 2022 goals with cycling and some plans and all that. So
cool.
We're excited. I'm excited. And I have my Hell of the South.
Whoa.
Hell of the West inspired. This was my first ever bike race that I participated in.
Is that the mountain one?
What do you mean by the mountain one?
What race is that?
The Hell of the South that takes place, it's actually been discontinued, but it was in South Tennessee, probably about like an hour and a half below Nashville. And it's this circuit course. I'm trying to remember what it was. Maybe like, I don't know, probably a good 17-mile circuit. And it had two big features, two big climbs in it.
Yeah, so that was
a really sketchy
one.
Back road too. I don't remember what the elevation is, but it was my first ever bike race. And it was a blast. I can't remember how I placed. I want to say it was probably 18th or something like that.
So we're talking about American Flyers, right? And
yeah, that's our
Hell
movie
of the West
today. American Flyers and Hell of the West. I'm gonna get that jersey, by the way. I went bowling last night, and I'm totally.
I did years ago. There's a ride in out by Lake Mead that basically goes out near Valley of Fire and back to Lake Mead, and it's in the summer, and I can't remember what it's called, but it has the name Hell in it, and or it has the word hell in it, and I think that that's characteristic typically of summer rides, is that the races or the rides typically have that word in it, which is interesting because Hell of the West took place, I think, in July, if I remember right from the movie.
Yeah, that's what it said. Yeah, in the movie, it's in July. And the thing that was hilarious to me too is like the second race day, she's like, "Go back to bed. The race doesn't start till noon." And I
know.
Crying out loud, a noon start time.
I had the same exact thought. I was like, that's an error. Yeah, that's a
nobody would do that. Like nobody would do that. They start races in the summer at like 7 o'clock in the morning because it's bad enough that it's
I'm trying to remember when the one that I would do out in Vegas or at Lake Mead would, but I think it would start at like 6. You think about summertime in Vegas, and anytime you ride in the summer, it's pretty rough to do anything midday to afternoon. You're going to get sick and
like thousands of feet of climbing. I think they talked about that they go up to like 12,000 feet, and at one point one of the signs read 7,000. I'm like, that is ridiculous. I was like, and I think it was like they said like over 90 miles. Like the third leg was like over 90 miles, and I'm like, that's freaking bonkers.
I thought it was funny that David or Davey was, when Kevin Costner, is it Marcus? What is his name?
Uh, yeah,
I think Marcus maybe,
Kevin
but
Costner,
when he
like just
comes,
rocking the '70s stash, dude.
he's
Like
yeah, it
so
looked
pro.
great. He comes and he's like, "Hey, have you been riding?" He's like, "Yeah, I've been doing like 40 miles a day." And I'm just sitting there thinking, so he goes from 40 miles a day to this what appears to be professional race with
Right.
international riders,
Well, I don't
and
think it's
it's an
professional.
elevation.
I don't think it's professional because in the '80s, Olympians were not professionals, right? So they
Well,
were
I mean, from
amateurs.
the
So that
US, is that I don't know if that's a
that was an international
worldwide.
rule. Yeah, that
Oh,
was an
okay.
international rule that you could not participate in the Olympics if you were a professional. So they would have all been in the.
Nonetheless, it was big enough of a race to have Eddie Merckx start it
I
the
know,
first day.
right?
So I
Eddie Merckx looked great too. I was like, well, that's a young Eddie Merckx right there, which is
and
funny because they make the villain of the movie from the 7-Eleven team. They call him Cannibal, which is actually what they called
so
Eddie
was
Merckx.
back then was the 7-Eleven team not a professional team? Because they
Well,
had they
it's
had the specialized team and they had the
yeah,
7-Eleven
which would
team and
suggest
the Russian
sponsors,
international team.
but non-pros were allowed to have sponsors for Olympics. I mean, I don't know what the
Well,
ins and
and
outs were.
and the thing is that it could have been a mix race, right? Because it was
Could have
international teams with because the U.S. team was there
was
too, weren't
there,
they?
yeah.
And
Which
then
they
and
didn't
then
even
you
like
have
weren't
different. I
even the
don't
pack.
back then did they have the different levels of riders like they do now?
I
Like you
don't
can
know.
have what do they call it? Like the continental is that what they're
I
called,
don't.
continental riders, and then the tour riders and the grand tour riders? They have like different levels. It's
Yeah,
a bit
well,
confusing still now to me, but there's a
even here in the
lot.
U.S., I raced in Cat 5, which is like the
Hmm.
entry level category races, which it goes all the way to Cat 1, and then it goes like I think it's called Pro after 1, and then yeah, I don't like that's the USA like local whoever system, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I don't know cycling well enough to know how all the professional ins and
yeah.
outs work.
Once it goes to international or at least professional, there's a whole system within the professional realm. It's almost what I kind of extrapolate it to would be like semi-professional baseball, so like double A, triple A, and then major leagues. I think is kind of how it works, but it's really deep. Like it's hard to figure out um because sometimes they'll have mixed races where they have like the grand tour teams, and then they'll have like and I forget what the term is they use it, but a team that's still professional but it's not like grand tour,
Professional.
yeah, level.
Yeah.
And for those listening, you may not have any idea what we're talking about. We're just talking about professional cycling.
Yeah. Well, because we're wondering how this no-name, kid like
Yes,
beats
exactly.
like just smashes everybody's. Well, I
Yep.
love this was hilarious to me that like in the third day of the race, he's up with the cannibal because his brother's out or whatever.
Yeah,
And he's like, "Oh, you don't like it up front?" I'm like, "You don't like
he
it up
spent
front?"
all day
I'm
yesterday.
like, day two, he ran the freaking race, dude. Like, what are you talking about? He spent the whole
Yeah.
day up front. He was freaking miles ahead of everybody. Like, that's so freaking hard. It's like I'm like, the writers of this show are idiots because like
Well,
that,
I do
like,
love it at the end of day two how they show him get caught, right?
yeah, yeah,
Because it's typical, and I love it when someone can break away and
it
stay in
never
the breakaway
happens.
and win
Never
the
happens.
stage, but it's
Never
very
happens.
rare.
It never
Mark
happens.
Hershey did it, I think, not this last tour, but he did it the tour before, which I think got him into. So he was with the Sun. Oh, what's the name? Sun something team, and then it got him into the United Arab of Emirates team. What is their name? I can't think of
Yeah,
their
I don't know.
name right now, but it's the one with Pogacar, the
Mhm.
the two-time tour champion right now, Tour of France champion. Um, and he's a breakaway rider, or at least he was on the Sun team. Whatever. Shoot, we're gonna get eaten alive by
It's
cycling
so hard to do
people.
too because the analytics of professional cycling now,
Mm-hmm.
like they know exactly like how to gain the metrics. Like they know how to measure his speed and they know
Yeah.
how much distance they can let the guys get away before they know what pace they have to set
It's
to
quite
catch
impressive.
them. You know, the analytics is just bonkers. I mean, it's crazily over the top.
I did enjoy that with stage 2 of the Hell of the West.
Yeah, like,
is that he does this breakaway, right? Which I always love breakaway riders. It's just exciting when it's like in a mountain stage and they're breaking away, because it's very unlikely that they'll stay to the end, especially in a mountain stage. But he breaks away.
To really stay away, they've got to have at least 5 to 8 guys. If they have 5 to 8 guys,
maybe it's more unlikely in a flat stage. I feel like they'd catch them. Breakaway, mountain stage is more likely.
Yes, mountain stage is way more likely, and you need 5 guys, 5 to 8 guys. If you don't have 5 to 8 guys, then forget it.
Yeah, because you need help, you need support, and I think so. The one thing I liked that I thought they got well was the end of stage 2, where he gets caught in like the last 50 meters or whatever, which is very characteristic.
Yeah, but holding off for third, it's like, no way, dude.
No, I was surprised, or maybe it was the last like 200 meters or something. But I was surprised. I was like, wow, he still got third. Like usually you're going to get passed by at least 10.
You get caught at the 1,000-meter mark,
you get caught by the peloton,
and you're done, because you've been hammering, which they articulate, which they represent well. That he represents. I thought the way that they looked on the bikes was great. I was really impressed, because last time I watched the show, I wasn't a cyclist, and now I'm pretty much all in. And like Kevin Costner looks great on the bike. Like
he looks like a rider. Not all the actors do. Like the Russian dude, I thought was too muscular up top. He didn't look like a rider. But I thought Kevin Costner, I questioned, and I didn't look into it, but I questioned, what was he a rider, or is he a rider? Because he looked like a rider. His thighs looked thicker, his arms were thin, and that's what happens when you ride a lot, is you tend to lean out a ton up top, and your arms and everything
so hard. That Russian guy, like, you'd have to work so hard to look like that, and cyclists just are not going to spend time using that.
I don't know that they would on his level. I don't think. I mean, sometimes you see sprinters that are a little more built, but even then, then it's the ratio is very off as far as upper body muscle and lower body. Their legs are huge.
They're not working on their chest at all. They might have bomber like arms and triceps,
and that's because they get a bigger, because if you've ever sprinted, you will use your arms. Like you go all in, and you're pulling on the bar, or on the handlebars, on the drops usually, but yeah, so there could be,
especially if you're like a light GC contender, you're going to be like all
but
that.
I thought Kevin Costner looked the part. I was impressed. Yeah, I was impressed by it.
Well, I was really impressed just how he looked on the bike. Like, I mean, the way he pedaled, the way he handled the bike, like he looked like he had spent.
And you could tell the difference. Anyone who's ridden enough or watched enough riding, you can tell a lot of those riders, they didn't look quite like a professional rider would look. And it was interesting because I thought Kevin Costner, like his first, he won the first stage and he looked like a pro rider. At least he looked decent. And his brother, I thought, didn't really look like a rider as much. I mean, he looked fine, but he didn't look as good. I thought Kevin Costner at least prepared himself for the part quite a bit.
Yeah, I think he looked great. I was really impressed by that, actually.
So I want to talk about, this movie came out in 85. Growing up, my dad would talk about 2 athletes pretty frequently. There was a handful of athletes. I mean, there's a bunch of classic professional athletes from that era that I think all of us would probably know. But the 2 that my dad would talk about, one was Steve Prefontaine, who was a runner. And then the other was Greg LeMond. And so this movie comes out in 85. If I remember right, Greg LeMond, who's an American cyclist, retired. I think he won his first world championships in 83. And so I wonder if he was somewhat inspiration for a big movie, a somewhat big movie. I mean, there's some decent actors in here to come out 2 years later. They must have,
Yeah.
I would think, probably
Been tapping
started.
into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. He's got a bike company that's in Knoxville.
Yeah, Lamond.
Yeah. He's got a electric bike that's coming out. I just saw another advert for it.
Yeah, he had a big deal with Trek for years, and then it kind of fell through, and then he went a little silent for a little while. But I've heard rumblings that he has some stuff coming out again.
Yeah,
But
really hard
Greg
well.
LeMond. So anyone who doesn't know, Greg LeMond was a rider in the 80s, professional. He won the tour in 86. He was shot in the chest with a shotgun at close range while hunting with family. He wasn't able to race in 87 and 88. Is that right? 86, 87, 88.
I don't know the years.
Yeah. And then he came back and won the tour 2 more times. The Tour de France is what we're talking about. Won it 2 more times, and then had to stop riding or stop racing because of the lead that was still lodged in his body. Amazing. You talk about amazing riders.
It's so tragic too, because there was no serious American cyclist before Greg LeMond.
Yeah. Well, I think Greg LeMond,
such a big deal.
If he wouldn't have got shot, I think he could have been as many wins as Eddie Merckx. Possibly he could have been more, because to get shot and then miss 2 years because of being shot by a shotgun and having lead pellets stuck in your body, and then to come back and win 2 more years in a row. I think he could have won the 2 years he was off, maybe, and he could have rode longer. But if he won the 2 years he was off, that would have been 5, which would have tied Eddie Merckx. But anyways, I'm also biased because I get excited because I love Greg LeMond. I think he's very innovative racer too.
Yeah, he changed glasses.
Aerodynamics for riding.
He introduced a lot of the and cycling's a really interesting mix of kind of classic things that you do, but then also constant innovation. It's this really interesting pull between the two of certain things you don't innovate and you kind of keep classic, and then other things that constantly are innovating. And the bike technology and how it's changed in the last 2 decades is just, it's bonkers.
I think incredible. Something for those who don't ride that's interesting, for me, I'm what you call probably like a party pace rider, which means I'm not super fast. I mean, I can go decently fast. For those who don't ride, they'd probably think, oh, you're really fast. But in the grand scheme, I'm a slow rider. I'm also a big, a heavy rider. When we did our ride, I was 275. So I'm a heavy rider. But when you talk about getting into racing, these little innovations make a big difference. And you look into, aerodynamics, you look into position that you're riding on, or you look into even the weight of the bike and the components. These things can make differences, but really that's when you're getting into pro cycling. For us, the bulk of us,
it's so minimal.
We just get excited and we want to have the best of the best.
And it's fun, but the margins of difference is it's for those that are at the peak.
Yes. So tell me, so we have a couple of fun facts, but I want to get into a couple of questions I had about the movie, but we have a couple of fun facts. We have, what's her name? I think it's Jennifer something, but it's Baby from Dirty Dancing makes a little cameo, right? And she just, I love her part where she just starts breaking down. She just completely falls apart because the brothers get into this huge fight.
Yeah.
And then I love how at the when she's breaking down, she's like, "Oh, I need to call my mom."
Yeah,
because the brothers are fighting about their mom.
It's so hilarious.
So we have her.
Yeah, so the dynamics are really interesting with all of that as well, which I didn't remember because I hadn't really watched this movie since I was a kid. And I hadn't really picked up on the family dynamics. It's really interesting that there's this intense frustration from the oldest, because the oldest like is accusing the mom. It's pretty harsh, man, of the mom just like emotionally checking out with the death of the father, which is significant because he knows he's sick, you know, which with some kind of brain thing or whatever, that it's like an awaiting
it's really
aneurysm or
interesting
whatever.
how we have heightened emotional reactions to situations, and oftentimes from the other side all we see is criticism and anger, but from this outside perspective of a viewer, right, we can see, wow, Kevin Costner's reacting, one, because he's dealing with death of his father, but probably more so because he has a potentially terminal disease the same as his father, and probably processing through, I may die.
Well, I mean, the way I
And
think the movie portrays it is that he is going to die, that his time is essentially numbered. That's
well,
what,
and
this is
and
our
I
last
think
chance
I think
to live
technically,
victorious.
if he really had an aneurysm like he did, he probably would be dead.
Probably
And I
wouldn't have
don't
won the second stage of the
and I
last
don't
race.
and I don't know that, I don't know that I've seen people who've had aneurysms. I don't think I've ever seen blood out the ear and out the nose,
Yeah, I think
but
it's
but it's
movie magic.
dramatization. But
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting, this idea that when we're in it, right, and we're, maybe we're on the other side, we're the mom, it feels like criticism and judgment, and it's hard for us to see that maybe that criticism and judgment is really pain and fear. And it's
Insecurity of
interesting,
attachment.
yeah, and it's interesting that for Kevin Costner, the one who is criticizing and judging, it's really probably not criticism or judgment, but it's probably, once again, anger or sorry, fear or loneliness or worry. But what comes out is judgment. And I think that
Yeah,
happens so much in relationships.
yeah, I think it is what happens in relationships. I mean, I think that is the it factor of conflict in relationships, is that we struggle to hear what the insecurity. I mean, it's any time that there's a poke or an attack, somebody is letting you know what they feel insecure about, and it's
Yeah.
almost impossible to boil that down and hear their insecurity. I mean, it takes so much emotional awareness to not react to the attack and to hear they're just expressing their own personal insecurity that touches at home. And that's really, to me, like what it comes down to.
Well,
It's
I
like what it
think,
comes down to in an intense family relationship or marriage relationship,
and I think
parent-child
the
relationship.
thing is for the listener, how to identify the difference, the person that's being poked at, right, the mom is being kind of
Right.
criticized. For that person, I think, what really has to happen for progression in that relationship to happen in a way where there's healing instead of deteriorating, I think that person has to find a way to see that what is being said is not the actual truth or concern, but that there's something underneath that. And it's really hard when we're attacked. What we hear becomes so real that we feel like, well, our shame is engaged, right? Or we get frustrated, we want to retaliate or protect, or we want to run away, right? We fight or flee. And so I think that what we have to do is find a way to kind of slow that process and remind our mind, our central nervous system, that, hey, what's being said is not how that person actually feels. That's what they're saying. There's
It's
something underneath that.
Yeah.
Because I think that's, what causes further deterioration in relationships is it feels so honest and real in those moments. Like, this person really thinks this about me.
Yeah.
What is the point of moving forward with this relationship if they really feel that way? But
it's
don't.
so interesting that that's what comes up in the conflict or the tension of a relationship. That it's so fascinating that we've evolved or emotionally developed to this place that when we're feeling deeply insecure and detached or alone that we fight. It's so counterintuitive. That's
Well,
how we've cultivated, you know what I mean?
so
That if I'm feeling insecure, that the way that I go about doing that is to criticize or to push. It's almost like this self-preservation system of like,
yeah,
I'm gonna push you away
it's a
so
defense
I'm not as
mechanism.
hurt by
Hmm.
you leaving or something like that. It's a really
Exactly.
strange thing that we've developed as human beings in conflict.
And I think the movie does a great job at this, because you see with Kevin Costner. So Kevin Costner plays this kind of on the outs professional, semi-professional writer. He was writing for the 7-Eleven team. Who knows what level he was at, but he was a decent writer. And we have this scene where he's showing his younger brother tape of a race, and he makes a comment that I think is alluding to answer, or kind of speaking to what you just said, John, which he says, he shows this clip, and it's of him losing to a teammate. I think they were teammates at the time, or they were opponents. I don't know. So teammate.
They were teammates. Mm-hmm.
And so it shows him losing, and he makes a comment like, "There it is." And his brother is, I think, like, "What?" And he's like, "Oh, there's the moment I lost."
That I gave up, right?
And then he says, "Yeah, I gave up." And then he says, he says something to the effect of, "It's interesting. I'm so good at it that no one can see." Basically, what he's saying is, I'm so good at being a failure that no one can see. And right there, I think, is the answer to your question, John. What he experiences most in his life is utter shame. I am not enough. I'm so good at not being enough that no one can even tell. And so, to kind of allude to this defense mechanism, I think what happens for Kevin Costner in these moments, or for us in these moments, is that our shame is so deep that we're bad, we're not enough, that it's too scary to say, "Hey, I'm so scared right now, and I'm so alone." Because I think in his mind, he's thinking, why risk that? Why risk opening up to someone that I care about? Because they're just going to tell me that I'm not enough, and that, you're going to die, and you're going to be alone, or that you should die, or whatever his mind is telling him.
Or the criticism of the mom of you actually abandon him in this moment of deep need, because he tells this really intense moment of like, dad was, crying out for essentially comfort and support, and you couldn't handle it, and so you left him alone to suffer by himself, right? So it's almost like there's this disclosure of, am I going to be left to suffer alone,
So I think, and it's not about mom though, it's about he's already thinking, right, I would be left alone, right? That is going to happen to me, because why would you stay, mom? Right. I'm not good. I'm not enough. And so the fear of saying that, which is the true emotion, what we do is we protectively, right? This is our amygdala engaging, and it's fighting in this moment. It's protectively saying, well, you did this, you did that. We're trying to push the person away so that at least we have some semblance of control of our own fate. Right. Which the thing is when we do that, when we have that defense mechanism, that control of our own fate is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because what ends up happening, which is what we fear is going to happen.
Well, and that's the thing that's interesting that I bring up, right? Is that we self-sabotage, that we've organized in this way, that we self-sabotage. So it's like on our terms in a really kind of twisted way. It's like, well, they abandoned, but they did because. But it's interesting because it's almost like it's a dare, right? It's like almost this desperate attempt to get the need met. It's really like when you step back. Well, when you step back in the way that we are and talk about it, it's really bizarrely interesting that this
it's a combination, right? It's a combination of, I'm horrible and I feel like this is going to happen to me also. Like, why would you stay? Not because she's a bad mom or a bad wife, but because I am me. And then it's a combination of, well, let me push a little bit. We see this with kiddos with reactive attachment disorder, right?
Oh,
Especially
yeah.
those who have been in foster care system where they push just to test the waters.
Right.
And it's kind of a combination of
Like,
that,
will
as
you
we as
care? Will you
adults will
invest?
push, right, and test the
And
waters to see. And that's coming from a place of fear, right? It's
right.
coming from a
Well,
place of insecurity. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, and also too, like, you know, there's an interesting like byproduct of if you will go with me to the tension, then you love me. Like, right? Like if you'll stay in the storm with me versus being pushed away by my attack,
Yeah.
then it's almost like this
It's a test, right? Of
secondary, yeah, it's like the
yeah,
secondary attachment of like, okay, well, you hung in here even though
yeah.
I was a
Great
total
point.
a-hole. Like I was a
Mhm.
total a-hole here, but you did hang in there and you took some abuse from me, so maybe you love me. You know, maybe
Yeah,
you do love
maybe
me, or
I
maybe you
am worth enough to stay
right,
with.
like you will, you know, even though I've been a towhead or a jerk or whatever, you still see the value of me and will stick
And
with
it
me. So I wonder if it's a
and it doesn't have to be something like this is pretty, grandiose, right? Because it's a
yeah.
movie. It's like, man, my father was crying out for help on his deathbed and you just ignored him or whatever.
Well, it's
We
interesting
may
too
not
to
all have those things happen.
let me pause you right there too, because it's really interesting too, because Davey's like, you know, defending mom and kind of saying, well, maybe we're not all as strong as you, right? So it's interesting that Davey
So
sees him as strong,
yes, because it's
but
not
he
because for Davy, it's him and his brother. His brother is his mom from
right,
Davy's perspective, where
sure.
from Kevin Costner's perspective, mom is mom. Does that make sense? Right.
Yeah, sure, sure.
And so that's why Davy pushes against his brother. Like Davy's doing the same thing with his brother as his brother's doing with his mom. It's really
Right.
interesting, right? Because
Well,
we all
and
do
then
that.
and it's also interesting that there's this undercurrent of not living up to your potential, at least from Kevin Costner's point of
Mhm.
view, of, you know, not being great. Like,
And
yeah,
that
you
comes
beat
from
me
his
on
own
your essay.
shame.
Yeah. Well, and it'd be
Mhm.
interesting to know what the family dynamics were. You know, we don't know what the dad's personality was like or the family expectations were. I mean, he's a doctor, for crying out loud. But then he's like challenging the brother, like, you know, you beat me on my SATs. You're better in these ways, but you're not. Like, what are you doing? Eastern philosophy? Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing with your life?
Because it's a shame and then it's a poke, right? It's
Mhm.
once again the same cycle where it's instead of kind of connecting and understanding or seeking to understand Davy, it's a poke and a criticism because his shame's engaged.
Yeah.
And I think
The
that's what's
projection of shame onto his younger brother.
yes. And I think
Yeah.
that's what's so interesting and universal about a conflict in relationships is that we poke and criticize because we're not able to see past the fear, right? Or
Yeah,
the
past
fear,
our own shame. Yeah.
shame. And it's, and I'm not saying this should be easy. It's hard. I do it too. We all
It's
do
really
it.
hard. Yeah, it's
But
really hard.
I think that the key is here is that we don't all have this aneurysm diagnosis to where
Hangover.
that's gonna, I mean, essentially he's dying, which allows his mom, to and in him to connect again.
Yeah,
We
to
don't
fill
all
up.
have that, right? So we have
Right.
to look at other ways to work past that in relationships. And I think that's the thing here that for me stands out. And there's many ways to do this, but I think a key here, and it is universal, what I see with a lot of relationships, whatever that relationship dichotomy might be, not always, a intimate partner, but it could be a lot of other things. Brother, sister, husband, mom, dad, or sorry, parent, child. But the key here, I think, is seeing beyond what is being said.
A really hard thing to do.
It
I mean,
is.
it's a really hard thing to do, especially when you're carrying that much shame because you just instantly go to
Yeah.
your experience. I mean, it takes so much emotional maturity to really go, what is the other person? And then really be committed in one respect. And I think that this is really a key, at least to marriage relationships, to put it above your own, like to ultimately put it above your own. But the really paradoxical thing is when you do that, you really get what you need and what you want. It's
So
this
here,
it's this really like mystical thing that happens when you decide to put the attachment needs of the other above your own, that you really get the secure attachment, right?
So
because
it
you're
takes,
good, because you're all in, you're all
yeah.
in, you're good, you're gracious, you're kind, you're forgiving. And that makes you of value that the other person is going to absolutely keep you around. And they're going to reciprocate. If they're a decently healthy person, they're going to reciprocate as well.
They are. And I think therein lies the hard part of this is you risk.
It's an act of faith,
right?
Yeah, it's an act of faith.
You
right?
risk, and this risk is oftentimes a huge risk from our perspective.
Because, well, what if they don't? Because if they don't do
and
it,
then
I'm just abandoned.
And then they don't, because there's probably a history built already.
Or they do, but we perceive it as
we don't
they
see
don't.
it.
We can't see it because our shame is, I've had so many couples where a spouse absolutely has done the thing, has been trusting, has extended themselves into their own terrifying fear of insecurity, and the other spouse really sabotages and doesn't see it.
So then it's a risk to open up and to see past what's being said. But then sometimes it's a risk because we have to trust that what is being said is true, right? We have this said so often where a spouse will do it. They'll do what we're asking them to do, and they'll have a great response. And then the other spouse doesn't accept it, like you said, right? Because they don't trust it. They think you're just saying that. You're just saying that to shut me up. You're just saying that to calm me down. You're just,
it's just this one time, which is, that's the thing that's really,
it's not going to last.
Dynamic, right? And that's the dynamic that I've seen, particularly when people experiment with this. They'll have some good experiences, but you're not going to rid yourself of the bad habits or the insecurities. So that's going to come up. And so then you sabotage the good things that have happened because you're assuming that, okay, it happened twice good, but once not, or twice good and 3 times not. So then therefore you're not going to do it. And it's
which,
like, well, you just,
therein lies, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
You're good.
Okay. So therein lies the power in a therapist's ability to get to raw emotion with someone. And this is what I love when I'm working with a relationship, whatever type of relationship that is, even if it's parent-child, when I can get one of them, and then eventually both of them, to that raw emotion of what they're feeling, and then they're emotional, and you can see it, you can see the pain, you can see the feeling, and the other person in that relationship is sitting next to them seeing it, they start to, over time, right? Because you want to build that window of tolerance continually. They start to, over time, believe that maybe there is truth to what I thought.
Well, that's when it really happens. To me, that's when the healing and attachment happens, when it's like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
It's not what I fear, it's their insecurity. And that's a really tough moment to get through. And one of the things that I really try to encourage, particularly my couples therapy, and I think is so essential, is to be so consistently, and I'll use the word over the top, but maybe not over the top for lack of a better word, consistent in deliberate affirmation in the way that the other person feels loved. It's like, so that then creates this kind of gooey context of trust. It's like, if you can be deliberately forthcoming with physical affirmation or words of affirmation, or service if they're a service person, or whatever, then that creates this assurance that I'm going to continue to be deliberate in this. It's a safe environment, so that creates the opportunity for the risk or the belief that you can count on the person, versus, because we're not going to all show up all the time. Like, it's not possible. It's like, if I'm sick and my wife really needs me to be emotionally available, I'm going to be really compromised in how well I'm going to do that. Or if I'm under duress because of a failure at work, or if my wife is under duress and she's had a horrible day, and especially if I don't have a kind of relationship where I'm tuned into that, and I come home and I'm really emotionally needing that night, but the person is in their own space, unavailable to be perceptive and forthcoming. This is when, and then you have a bunch of nights of that over time, then this is where the breakdown of trust, or the opportunity of secure attachment, kind of starts to go away.
So what I'm hearing is kind of this idea of working towards a majority of the time. So working towards 51% of the time doing that, and 49% of the time not doing that. Even that is a majority, right?
Because you're not going to do it all the time, or because you can't think about your spouse all the time, because you've got other things you've got to give your attention to. It's like, we talked about one of the other episodes. It's like, you can't be a CEO and somebody working 8 hours a week and then also be incredibly emotionally attentive to your spouse. Like, it's not. So, there's got to be, a negotiation of that and a reality of that. But yeah, I think if the investment in the relationship is there, then it creates more of an opportunity to believe that they're capable of it. So that when you send the message like, hey, today is the day I really need you to be emotionally available for my insecurity, then hopefully they can really deliver.
But I think too, also seeing that message doesn't come, I need you to be emotionally available. It comes in forms almost all the time of pushing away with criticism and pokes, and recognizing that, hey, that criticism and poke is not, you are a piece of crap. It's, I need you because I feel so like alone and scared.
Because I feel like a piece of crap.
Yes.
Well, which is why, that's why, Gottman has been able to identify criticism as one of the real killers, because, you really have to develop the emotional maturity of being aware of your need to poke, and to do that in a constructive way, which you're allowed to do. You're allowed to ask for what you need. And I encourage that, but I just think it's so important to be deliberately engaged in helping the other person feel loved, because it's what we do when we fall in love, right? Think about how attentive we are when we first start dating, and how perceptive we are, and how much we extend ourselves, and
how
so it's kind of like,
right, we are right, we accept like so much, and then all of a sudden
we're so flexible and easygoing. And so it's like, so you've got to kind of retain a piece of that, is what I'm suggesting. You got to deliberately retain a piece of that keeps some of that magic alive, because that's, and that comes naturally when you fall in love and you're courting or whatever. But it's not.
Well, I think that the hard part is once there's been some injuries in a relationship, it gets to, because certain things are said that aren't real. These are criticism and pokes. These aren't truths. They're just what's said, but they feel so real.
They're just insecurities,
and they feel so real that it gets to the point where it's like, well, how do you heal something that is so like, it's so damaging? I'm like, they don't love me. I'm
that's
not
the real
lovable
damaging
by them.
part. The real damaging part is like, you don't see me. Like, you don't see what you've done or are doing, or don't understand. That's when I see people give up. I see people give up when their perception is the person does not get me, and they're never going to get me. So how can they love me? Like, how can they know what I'll need and be attentive to that need if they can't get it?
Well, and that's, and I think that's wherein lies the issue, is that so many of our relationships get to that point, and working through that, I think comes to, it's more than just trying to get back to what we had when we were dating, or when the friendship was new, because it's not that simple, right? And it's really getting to that vulnerability of risking a little bit, but understanding that what I'm seeing is not what they're feeling or experiencing themselves. And that's really hard because it seems so real. And I think that for me, the gauge, if someone's asking me as a professional, when do I involve a therapist? I think for me, it's, can you see past the criticism, or do you believe the criticism is completely true and honest?
Well,
If
and
you
that's,
can't see past it, then I would say
yeah.
get a professional and at least try that
Well, and that's
before giving up
also,
completely on the relationship.
and that's, I mean, and I don't know what you think about this, but that's also going to be 100% tied up in your trauma.
Yeah.
Right. Like your ability to see someone's genuine expressions of attachment is so compromised by, the view that you have coming from where you've come from.
Well, I think that kind of alludes to our point earlier, right? Which is this movie, yeah, it's a pretty direct and obvious trauma, but in normal relationships, there's traumas often, right? And so I think that's part of this process, is recognizing that, hey, there's all types of traumas or injuries, however you want to reference it, but interactions that happen that we perceive as, I'm not worth loving.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not
going to
worth
be abandoned. I'm going to be rejected. I'm going to be left to suffer by myself. Well, and that's what we love about these movies, where there's this sense of resolve, right? You've got this, this kid that does do something great, and he does it because of how his brother coaches him and encourages him. You do have a mom that shows up, and
the picture at the end, right? The picture at the end is great.
Exactly right. It totally gives you the satiation that you're looking for. Mom puts herself in harm's way to run across to show, like, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll put myself in the traffic.
Heather made a great comment. She's like, why is the road so busy? Like, isn't this a closed circuit? Like, where did all these people come? I was thinking the same thing.
It's just the notion of, sacrificing and
exactly
and
because she loves, right?
I'll be irrational and run into traffic.
And therein lies part of the issue with media, is it's grandiose, and so it shows this great sacrifice, right? Man, this mom loves her son so much, she's running through this dangerous traffic, where oftentimes our shows of love are not grandiose,
not dramatic,
but they're more real than what we see in the media on TV, right?
And that's the same thing too with with Kevin Costner, subjecting himself to greater duress of his illness to support his brother in achieving something great, especially because he defeats the Russians and the cannibal. I mean, not just
it is the villain. 80s.
I know, right? It's the 80s. I love that. It's like, of course, you have the Russian villain.
Yeah.
Not only is it the Russian villain, but it's the betrayed lover and cannibal cyclist.
I know. I always thought it was so funny. It's her ex-husband. I was like, man, they really went all in with this. It's like they were married.
Until like as I was watching the movie, like at the end of stage 3, when the cannibal is trying to get Davey to just set in so he can have the win. I love like the little fight club. He's like, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna send you off this cliff. Like that's like, how
where's the race officials? Like where's who's filming this race? Like where is everyone? He's like, we're about to kill him.
Yeah, it's like seriously, I'm like, if that guy goes over the edge, he's dead. I'm like, I'm gonna win this. I gave you a chance for a second place. Now I'm gonna kill you.
I know, just because it's being competitive.
I was like, whoa. Let's just chill out a little bit here, buddy. Maybe we can win without killing someone.
And then I love how it's what, like 5 miles later, and he's like, great job. See you next year. After he literally tried to kill him.
I know. But I just tried to absolutely destroy you and any opportunity that you could to cycle again. But
so good. Classic 80s. Classic 80s.
Yeah, it's a little over the top there. No, this is one of my favorite lines from this scene, though. Do you remember how the girl that ends up to be the love interest, she
Baywatch girl. Did you know that? I'm sorry, I didn't cut your point off, but she was in Baywatch.
Oh, was she? That's hilarious. So I love how you know, they're like on the road or whatever, and there's this scene, and she's with these granola people, you know,
Yeah, the
she's like, I
hippies.
just want a cheeseburger. And then the one like a hitchhiker says, you ever look into the eye of a cow when they're killed? You're literally eating fear. I just love that line. It was so ridiculous. Look into the eyes of a cow when you kill it. You're eating fear. I just
I've
love that.
never killed a cow.
There's something there going on with the juxtaposition of the cannibal bike cyclist and this idea of consuming someone in the murderous state and consuming fear.
It's
Those
true.
guys are
They
so
mention that, right? There's like this underlying tone, like some type of propaganda, because it is the cannibal. That's his
yeah.
name.
Yeah. It's
And
like
then
his
she's
nickname.
like, there's this kind of vegan granola type thing. And interestingly enough, I'm pretty sure the Baywatch actress is
Mhm.
vegan in real life.
Oh, really? That's hilarious.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. She's playing a trying to be vegan, but she really wants some meat.
Well, I love too, like that the whole idea of like their cosmic connection is her waiting for the quarter
Yeah.
pounder. Like,
Well,
I wouldn't have
it was
waited
so
for that
funny.
quarter pounder.
Well, they're like the quarter pounders are out of stock or whatever. Do you want a Big Mac? And I'm just thinking, back then, wasn't a Big Mac 2 quarter pounders like on top of each other?
No, it's too patty. It's just too.
It was
patties.
just 2/8
Yeah,
of a
yeah.
pounders
The
or
quarter
whatever.
pounder was definitely more meat. The double, the Big Mac was just a lot of bun and lettuce. You
It
got it because you had
was.
that middle. I've never ate a Big Mac in my whole life. I thought they were just bizarre. Like, why do I want a third bun? Like, I don't need a third piece of bread in the middle of my sandwich.
Well, you get 2 patties though.
So I never understood the Big Mac scenario.
And I love how in the 80s, there's so much more, 80s and 90s, there's so much more product placement in movies than there is now. You have so much in the 80s, 90s, and maybe even to the early 2000s.
What happened to 7-Eleven, dude? They were like a juggernaut.
They're still huge in Vegas and out west. I mean, they're everywhere.
Northeast. Oh, the Northeast 7-Eleven is.
There's not one in Memphis,
but they're challenged in the Northeast by Wawa's, and Wawa's definitely are better. Wawa's are a way better convenience store than 7-Eleven.
I've never been to a Wawa. I like 7-Eleven.
Wawa's have a deli. All the Wawas have a deli in them, and you can like order your sandwich however you want on a computer screen, and they've been doing that for a long time, like since 2000.
That's cool.
Yeah, so you can get in there and get your little hoagie, which is a Northeast thing for sure.
So we used to watch this movie when I was younger. I don't think I realized like how much sexual innuendo is in it until I watched it recently.
The Baywatch girl shows a lot of booby in the show. And my wife, we were watching the opening scene, and she's like, I can see the edge of that guy's dong. Like where he's like getting undressed to get in the shower. She's like, I saw part of his penal head or whatever. She's
the 80s, man. There's no, I don't think there was in the early 80s. So there was a point in the 80s where the MPAA like didn't rate or something. So they kind of just had obligatory ratings. And then I think it was in the 90s, right, where they implemented the PG-13 rating, or the late 80s, early 90s or something. But there's a point in the 80s when the MPAA was not regulating ratings. And so you could have, like, whatever.
It's PG,
whatever.
Sure. You can have.
It's a movie that I think maybe not a lot of people would remember, or maybe haven't even seen.
No,
but it's a great really movie. Knows. And I think, I mean, Kevin Costner for me is wonderful. Awesome. Great actor.
He was great. I mean, and I think the thing too, that now that we're talking about the movie, I never became consciously aware of the acting. So that says to me that they were just being their characters. I think Kevin Costner was fantastic in that movie. The delivery was fantastic.
So then our ride, let's talk about our ride.
All right, hold on. I got one more thing I got to say about the movie. Well, that gets me fired up for 2022, dude. The music during particularly day 2 and 3 just gets me fired up, dude. That 80s music, the racing 80s
I remember
music,
it was good, but I don't remember
it
what
was
music
so
it was.
good. I'm like, get me on my bike. I'm like, I don't listen to music when I cycle, but I might need to the next time I go out, because this music is just like just getting me wanting to ride my bike. I wanted to ride my bike so bad last night. And the fact that it's beautiful this morning and I've got this cold going on is just making me insane.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry. Yeah, let's transition. So you want so yeah, what are we doing? What are we talking about?
So with our ride,
Dude, our epic
we did
Illinois.
Yeah, so John has a goal of riding
Mhm.
across all the states.
In the United States, from one border to another, whether that's a southern to a northern or a western to an eastern. But
Yeah.
it can't be diagonal. It's got to be a side to a side.
And so I don't have any goal. I just like
Came
to
along for the
go
ride.
along for things. So I tagged along. And so during this part of his adventure, we did Illinois and Indiana.
We essentially soft rode from St. Louis to
I don't remember the name of the town. It was north of
no, but what's the big city right next to the town?
we essentially rode Columbus. Was it Columbus?
I'll map it so that we get it right.
It was some little town with a B, I think, or an H. It was a B or an H. And I think it was just north of Cincinnati or Columbus. I can't remember what Ohio city's right there on the border of Indiana and Ohio.
It's it's Cincinnati. So we essentially rode from St. Louis to Cincinnati. I mean, save 20, maybe 10 or 20 miles. And
river
so
to
river.
We did this with his two boys who were our SAG.
So they rode
our support.
They drove the Bourbon and
yes,
had to leapfrog us, and they sat on their iPads for hours.
And so we started this ride. This was end of April of this year, 2021. Well, I guess when this comes out, it'll be last year.
Yeah, it'll be 2022. Yeah.
So April of 2021, the end of April, we drive out to St. Louis, and there's weather was not in our favor for the first couple days.
Scary. Yeah. So yeah, this was the real defining moment of the trip, right?
Yeah.
Because it's the night before we're out in the St. Louis area, and we're like 110% chance of horrific thunderstorm during our first day of riding, and we've got to get a good 90 to 100 miles in.
I think that first day, the goal was 100.
And so we're looking at each other, and we're like, we're gonna ride like some serious miles, and like it was like a bad 100% big thunderstorm. It wasn't like it'll blow over. Like we were screwed. And so Michael's like, "Hey, why don't we just go right now?" It was like 9:00 at night. He's like, "Let's just go right now." And I'm like, I don't know the roads, middle of the night. Like we got lights. I'm like, oh, what's better? Do we ride through the night, or do we, what do we do? And so we ummed and awed for a good hour.
Yeah, quite a while.
Yeah, because it was just like, oh,
when we had just eaten too.
Yeah,
like we could have went earlier.
Yeah.
And I think I even mentioned that. I was like, oh, we should do some riding tonight. And then we didn't really, I don't know what happened. We got distracted, and we did like other things.
Yeah, we're just like messing around and like went out.
And it's like 9:00 at night. We're starting
to like, we should probably ride. So now they're riding the thunderstorm, and so then we did it. I mean, the weather was really nice. It was really.
Yeah, what time did we start at?
Like 11:30.
Yeah, it was like 11. It was still before midnight, but it was late.
So the boys drove us up to our starting points, and we got out and we got all our lights going. And then we're like, okay, well, keep your phone on. We'll probably call you at like 4:00 in the morning or something like that. We're going to go as long as we can. And we hammered away. It was great, dude. It was awesome. But
beautiful.
It was such a beautiful, it was a beautiful night.
Busy.
And really, that was the real blessing because I think the roads that we started off on would have been pretty busy. So I think it was a huge blessing.
Probably the first 2.5, 3 hours were just awesome. I mean, the whole night was great. I loved it.
Well, I think about hour 6 or somewhere in there. I don't know what mile we were getting to, maybe 70 or something. Like we ran out of, like your light went or my light went or something.
I can't remember. Oh yeah, your light went. And
Yeah.
I had a charger. I have a top tube bag. And so I had a charger in there. So I took your light, gave you my light, and you kind of took the lead, and I just
Yeah, and
was
you were
right
just
next
like
to
in my
you.
shadow. So we're like, are we on the road?
Which, isn't, it's doable, but you have to understand we're in the middle of nowhere. There are
Nowhere, dude.
no street
There's
lights.
nothing. There's
the
nothing.
the moon was like kind of spotty because it was cloudy. It was like pitch black, and so we're still cruising along. I think we were still going like 16 to 18 miles an
Oh
hour.
yeah, for sure. Depending, unless there's a couple of little climbs that we have, but yeah, we were hammering away.
And I remember probably the most dicey part was there was like a construction area, and I think we had to go like over a bridge and down. And I remember a couple of times like you took a corner a little sharper than I did, and so I was in like pitch blackness, and it was like not very. And I remember thinking, this is probably not the best idea.
Yeah. I got really tired too. Like I think around mile 70 or something.
Well, your stomach, like something happened with your stomach. I think you had gluten or something, and it was just
I was just
giving you a
really
stomach
tired.
ache
So we
or
stopped
something.
at that gas station. I was like, dude, I'm done. And we called Emmanuel, and then we just decided to like march on until he got to us or whatever. And we got to like that highway area or whatever it was. We like pulled over, and you're like, I could do another 15 or 20. And I was like, I'm toast now. I'm sorry.
I think we stopped right around 70 or 80.
80. I think it was like over 80. I think
maybe
it was like
85.
Yeah, I think it was like 85.
And we slept. So we went back to the hotel.
That was glorious. Yeah,
it was. That was the best
so it was like
sleep I think I had.
4
the whole
o'clock
trip.
in the morning, and so 4 o'clock in the morning, and we slept till like noon. Right,
I think
like
we got
noon.
a good 4 hours.
And the storm totally came through, and it was
awesome
because we were in the hotel and was like waking me up with thunder and lightning. So definitely the right decision, because that kind of rain is way sketchy.
I think we slept
rainy
maybe till 11 because I think we had to be out
by noon. Yeah. You had like extended whatever.
And
so,
then we went in and we just rode again.
Well, that was great. We're like riding, and you're like, hey, should we do some more miles today? And I was like, yeah, that was like our first day. I was like, yeah, let's do another whatever, and we can just chip away. So we finished up day 1, and then we biked a little bit into our day 2 plan. So we I think we did like another 40 miles. Like we did another 40 miles or something like that.
It was over 100 for that first day with the two together. We just had we had the little nap in between.
And those roads, that second set of roads, because the rain went through, so it was clear. The roads were a little damp, so it wasn't too bad. We couldn't fly because it was a little damp. But that day, that second part of the day riding, those were beautiful roads. Man.
Yeah.
Just back roads, some country roads.
And I don't remember that. I don't remember that being all that trafficy.
No, it was
actually most of what we did was pretty good. It was, I think, the last day that was more trafficy.
It was, as we started to get towards Cincinnati. But then was it day 2 that we hit a bunch of gravel roads?
Day 2 was our gravel road day. We hit
like the official
more
day 2.
Gravel.
So like I was trying to stay off of, I don't like being on main roads. So I was picking roads that were back roads, but they were numbered roads, like they were routes. Like most roads in Tennessee, if they're not a major road, but they're still like a state road, like a route road, then they're paved. You know what I mean? They're not, because my favorite
not in Illinois.
Yeah, not in Illinois. My favorite thing about cycling, one of my most favorite things about cycling, is finding back little squirrely country roads.
Beautiful.
I love finding a road that people don't go on very much.
Day 3, we had some really pretty stuff once we got into
that Indiana. Climb. That was that day 3. That climb, which was brutal for you, I know, but that climb was just. I want to go back and do that climb someday.
It was I think it was actually a category race. I think it was a 4.
Yeah, it was a legit climb. It was a legit climb.
Yeah, and so for those who don't know categories, the high or the lower number you go, the more elevation you get in the climb. So, but yeah, that day 3 was really pretty. The climb. So for those who don't know, weight is not friendly on climbs. It really does.
And your knee starting to bug you? It was already starting to bug you.
I think,
wasn't it?
I think that it was after that where I really felt it was tinged. And the climb was it was a pretty long climb. There was some pretty good
3 miles. I want to
grades.
say it was a good
Yeah.
3 mile climb. It was a beautiful
And it
climb.
was
Nice back
consistent. I
road,
don't think
really
it
consistent.
backed
Yeah.
off. It was just a
No, it's definitely
climb.
over 7% the whole way, if not, and it had some maybe 8 to 10%
And
spots.
yeah, and so the weight being 275, the climbs are where I struggled quite
Yeah.
a bit. I could do climbs, it was slow.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah,
That
so
that down was legit too, man. We were
that was a little
balling on that
dicey
down.
too.
It
So
was dicey
we
with the
should talk
dogs. That was
just
the
for a second,
dogs,
yeah,
right?
about the climb. We get to the top of the climb and we're both pretty tired, right? I mean, this is a decent climb. I mean, not tired as in we're done. We're just,
Yeah.
usually you like a little bit of a break, you can recoup, just
Yeah.
I don't know, like a
little
mile or
10
something.
minute, grab a
Yeah.
granola bar or something.
And so we get to the top and it's up there. We get these, was it 4 or 5 dogs
It was.
that just
They were
attack.
murderous.
And John's ahead of me because, I'm trying to catch up. Essentially, we're at the top of the climb. I've been slower. These dogs come out and all I see is like them nipping at John. And I was convinced he was going to go down. And we're at the top of the climb and we're starting, we're at a decent speed again. Cause I think we were starting to even go down a little bit.
We might have actually done a little bit of it down before we hit those dogs. Cause it was like at
Did they get you? Did you film them?
No. See, and I classify dogs. There's dogs that watch you. There are ride-along dogs where they're excited to see you and they'll bark at you, but they just run alongside you. They're kind of friendly dogs. And then there are the murderous killer dogs that want to eat you and destroy you and make you crash and then crash you and then eat you when you crash. And these ones were murderous. Like you can tell the way they bark and you can tell the way they come at you because ride-along dogs will just kind of run.
Oh, they were straight on
near you.
Yeah.
The like I'm gonna eat you dogs will go for your bike and they're just stupid and they'll get in front of you or they'll come at your foot. And if you get, if they get at your wheel or you get tangled up with them, it's no bueno. It's like the worst thing.
Well, they like run at John and I'm behind and I had to have been an inch from hitting one of them.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to go over my handlebars.
It's not good.
I didn't, but I had to slow, right? I had to brake to not hit this dog. So I'm a big guy once again. So my ability to sprint and speed up takes a little bit of a go. And my knee's a little off. I tweaked it. And so the dogs start like coming at me and John was helpful, right? You're distracting them while I try to get speed up. But they bit my shoe. Like I didn't get hurt or anything. But I could feel the one dog like trying to get my shoe. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll like flinch.
But we had dogs. A lot of dogs.
I've got a friend who I haven't ridden much the end of this last year, but he had a really bad injury because of a dog. And so he's very dog afraid. And so I always buffer him. I always put myself in between him and dogs because I've had good luck with dogs, even if they're like, I want to eat you dogs. The thing a lot of cyclists do will like spray a dog with a water bottle.
Yeah, just pull.
And I don't do that anymore. I don't do that anymore because I was on a solo bike ride and I was on a subtle climb, a decent climb, and I had a German Shepherd come out at me. And he was a bit murderous, German Shepherd, not a friendly one. And I got him right in the face. And it totally like got him. Well, it got him and he like stopped for a second, but then he went full on beast mode. And I was like, okay, I'm never doing that again. Not to mention I just wasted my water. So I don't shoot my water bottle at dogs anymore, right? Because I had one go beast mode. And
so dogs
I barely got away from that one.
Dogs are a tricky part of cycling. When you want to stay safe, right? Yeah. And you're trying to stay away from too many cars. They're really inevitable. You can't get around them. Typically you can just sprint past them. The problem with day 3 and day 4, when we seem to have a lot of dogs, was my knee.
Well, the worst place to get a dog is on an uphill. Oh, that's when it's really bad.
Yeah.
And I've thankfully it seems like it works out not that too often, but that's the real worst is when you're gassing on a climb and then you get a dog because you're like, you don't have it, or you can only sprint for kind of a minute,
The crazy thing is some of these country roads, people will go a decent speed on. And I just think, man, as an owner, wouldn't you want to make sure your
Heck yeah.
dog doesn't
They don't
run
care.
out and get
No, that's
hit
not
or
the
something? But
farm mentality. They don't care.
yeah.
Dude, and I just was remembered of, was that day 3? It was day 3 that it was like windy that day, and we were in through
Oh, that's
those
right.
valleys. Do you remember that beautiful area that we all went through
Yeah.
before we met for lunch?
Yep.
I want to go back and do those roads, man. Those roads were
Once we got into
gorgeous.
Indiana had some really pretty, and it wasn't flat. You know, Illinois is more flat. I mean, Southern
Yeah.
Illinois has some hills to it, but once
No,
you got
yeah,
into
but
Indiana, it was
yeah.
it was really kind of
It
hilly and
was the
very pretty.
whole
We found
area.
some.
It was the whole area directly south of Indianapolis, like
Yeah, and remember we
Bloomberg
went
and
through that one area where there were just huge open fields of like these beautiful yellow flowers. Oh, it was so amazing.
It's what I live for, on being out there cycling, and you just come
I
across
will
a meadow
I will
or
say
something.
this. We made it, you know, I don't know, probably a few hundred miles. We, you know, maybe 280, something like that, 280, 300 miles. And then my knee started to go. Basically, it just loses its ability to do anything. It like I lose my strength, and it basically I had, for those who don't know, when you ride with cleats that go in to your pedals, and you can angle them. And so my left cleat, what I think I did is I pinched it in a little bit too much. So my front of my foot was pointed in, and instead of it seems, at least what I've started to realize, is my tendons like for my feet to be pointed out more. And so
or one of the things you could do too is you could just get pedals that float more, man. It might be
yeah, so you can loosen. So you can also loosen like your
different color,
your cleats,
like different
so that they're
ones will keep you more,
or the pedals so your cleats can move.
You might just need a more floater of a pedal.
And so we had done, close to 300 miles with my leg at a certain point, and we were keeping a good pace, and I'm a bigger guy anyways, and we've done some climbs. And so it just wore that tendon really quickly to the point where I just lost power. And so we spent, that last 100 or so miles, basically I was riding with one leg. So my left leg would just come up and go over. And one thing that I think for me was really meaningful out of this ride was this idea of building and gaining resilience. And there was plenty of times throughout this ride where there was the option of being able to just get in the Suburban and just support you by riding with the boys. It was a really easy out. And I think about that. I think we have so many opportunities in life where we can take that out. And there's not, that's okay. Like, that's not bad. But the thing is that if I ever took that out throughout the last 100 miles or so, I wouldn't have been blessed with what I gained at the end, which was invaluable to me. I would have robbed myself of what I gained at the end. Was, holy cow, I may be a big guy, I may be heavy, I might be slow, but I can do 100 miles on one leg with climbs. I needed support. Like, you were a good support to me. I don't know if I could have done it alone, because I didn't do it alone. But I gained the knowledge that I can do hard things. And that's invaluable. And I think how many times in my life.
It's so essential. We all need this. And I think that this is one of the things that we talk a lot about with movies, which is why movies are so important, or stories are so important, because there isn't anyone that does these things without a tremendous pain cave kind of experience, where you have to go into the pain cave or go into this place where you think you can't do it, or you can't do it, and maybe you get some grace and some support along the way. But it's such an invaluable experience to put yourself through. It's one of the things I love about cycling is that anytime I do a long ride, I experience that, but then there's the triumph of like completing and doing a thing that's like yeah, we did 420 miles or whatever in 4 days.
When
And
you
we
think
rode our
about
bike
that,
across 2 states. Like it's so cool. And we got to just laugh and talk, and we have these beautiful photos and these vistas, and the boys in the car screwing around and all that. Like it was so cool, dude. It's just
well,
like
I
such
think
a cool thing.
fear
It's like one of
prevents
my
us,
most
right?
well, and it's one of like my most memorable things of like 2021. It's like,
Yeah, it was
that's like
fun.
seared into my memory, those 4 or 5 days or whatever.
Well, I think that's the thing is fear prevents us a lot of times from thinking, of even trying or even
Yeah.
doing it. And then I think oftentimes we'll get into something and we might take another avenue without ever
We're just
completing
not even
that
trying.
thing.
Life's too busy, or I can't do
Yeah.
it, or.
And I think for me, just kind of that realization that how often throughout my life have I robbed myself of the beautiful thing, the beautiful resilience that's gained by pushing through. And I think that
Well,
that's what we need more of. It doesn't mean that
yes.
we're always going to push through. There's times when maybe it's not
Well, we do
appropriate to
get
push
defeated,
through.
or you just get defeated, or you go really big
Yeah.
and you don't.
But I think,
But I think this is really what we need. I think it's so essential, and I think it is resilience, and it does generalize. I
yeah,
mean, like the cold showers does generalize to facing hard things, and
yeah,
like to me, two of the great keys of a healthy emotional life is managing distress well, and um and really embracing distress, and like
yeah,
learning to cope with that well. You know what I mean? And that requires you to forge better relationships. It teaches you that you have capability, or you gain the experience of grace. I mean, because
hmm,
you can't get through those hard things without a friend or a support, or belief in God, where you see grace happening in your life or something like that. It's so essential, to create the opportunities for that, instead of just constantly wanting comfort
yeah.
and constantly wanting everything to be rich and excessive and at our ease. It's not good. It's not good to have
Well,
everything easy. It's not
the
good.
the the neat thing to me was something that was so hard and so difficult in the moment resulted in a joy and a feeling that I wouldn't have experienced or received. I wouldn't have been rewarded with if I didn't have that hard part, right? It made the end that much more grand to me, and I'm sure to you. And I think I'm not saying we need to push through all hard. There's certain things we need, that it wouldn't be appropriate. Like
Or you
if
just get
my knee
defeated.
was any
You just get
worse than it,
defeated.
it was, it might have
Yeah.
been on the line of I
Yeah.
need to make sure I'm not doing irreparable damage, right?
Right.
But I think what we shoot for is maybe more of
Mhm.
pushing through things. Maybe try pushing through more and more to um where we can gain more of those rewards instead
So
of
in the
robbing
spirit of
ourselves of it.
more for 2022,
Yes. So your goal, what is your
what are
goal?
we doing? Well, mine is my low goal is 8,000 miles.
So for me, what I really have been wanting to do is to
And I want to get a
ride.
bunch of states. I want to get a bunch of states. I want to
I
get at
want to,
least 4.
and I'm fine with that. Doing the rides are fun. For me, was throwing around, and we talked about this. I don't remember last month or something about kind of
Yeah,
like
a
a
couple weeks ago.
mileage goal. There's a guy here that I know well that he did 9,000 this year. I have another friend who did 1,000,000 feet of elevation for this
A
year.
million?
Yeah,
A
isn't that awesome?
million.
Yep.
A
And she's
million.
finishing it up right now using Mount Potosi out in Vegas. So
No,
it's
come on.
actually,
That's not a
yeah.
million.
So this is the wife of Jared Fisher. This
A
is Heather Fisher.
million?
So Jared Fisher is
How
the one
many?
that's ridden across the United States
That's on my
times
to-do
now.
list. That's on my
And
bucket
his
list.
wife had a goal this year of 1,000,000 feet of elevation, and she's at 990,
Shut the hell up. That's not even
940,000 or
the numbers
something.
on that. What is that?
And so I have thought about this, and I think my goal for this year, we still have a couple more days to hone it in.
That's
Yeah.
20,000 feet a week, dude.
Yep.
And 20,000 feet is, I've done multiple rides that have gone 7 to 12,000 in a day. Like
Yeah.
I've done, or was Cherry Hollow more than that? Cherry Hollow is like, it's like either 12 to 14, somewhere in there, 12 to 14, maybe 12 something. Or
It's not hard to get
something.
elevation in Vegas. You just go to the mountains.
That ride was
She actually lives in Blue Diamond, which she probably gets good elevation there.
Freaking joke.
Yeah.
Dude. There was a 26-mile climb.
There's some people that are just
I like it
for elevation.
Bring it. I'm all in, but that's
not
a lot.
I'm too big. Maybe if I could get down to like 180, I'd probably be good. But
if you could get under 200, you'd be fine.
But and my body's just not really designed for that. But I think my goal for this year, what I've been leaning on and thinking a lot about, is I would really love to get on the bike and not have like a mileage that I'm trying to get, but I would love to get on the bike every single day for 2022, including Sunday. I want to have every day. Yep.
Oh, that's a cool goal.
I want to have a ride every day. And so 365 rides. Even if I'm sick, I get on and ride a mile on the trainer or something. I don't care. That's what I've been leaning and feeling really. I've been thinking a lot about that, and I really feel like that would be awesome.
I'm all in with that one, except for Sunday is I believe for me for this year, like I need a rest day. Like I need a day where I truly have like the day off. I love that goal, but I'm with you for the 6 days. So I'm happy to be accountable and want to be held accountable for something. But I'm going to go. So the average for me to get 8,000 is 25, which I honestly, during my weekday rides, I really don't want to do less than 30. Like 20, I'll usually be somewhere between 24 and 27, but I really want 30. So I'm going to try to do on my weekday rides 30. I really want to do 30. And I know I just need to get up at 4:30. I just need to get up at 4:30.
When I do my normal rides, I like the 20 mark because that is quicker, right? You can get 20 in pretty quickly. I feel like that was right, just usually like an hour 15. I feel like
if I get my speed where it can be, then an hour and a half will get me right to about 30. If I can get my speed where it needs to be.
And then you can get the long ones. But I think, if the average is that many miles a day, it shouldn't be an issue because you always have longer rides. There's always the longer rides throughout the year.
Rides do 50s or whatever.
But so I want to do every day of the year.
I like that. I'll do the 6 days with you, and then my goal is definitely 8,000 for sure. And then we got to get some states in. So I definitely want to do Arkansas. I've already been talking with another guy that we're going to do Wisconsin, which is a 200 miler in a day. So I'm excited to do
that. They have that race where you ride across.
But I don't know if I want to do the organized ride. I just want to do Wisconsin. So I definitely want to do Arkansas, I definitely want to do Wisconsin. And then I like the idea we were talking a little bit about earlier, a couple of months ago, we were talking about doing South and North Carolina. I think that would be really fun to pick a time. I think I'd like to do spring. And I'd love for us to get out there and just go up the coast and do South and North Carolina and do along the coast. I think it'll be really fun.
And then we need to do New York. They have a path that goes all the way across New York that they made just for biking. And I think hiking and stuff. But it's a paid path. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on our biking adventures and American Flyers.
Dude, it was such a great show, dude. That music. I need that. I need to get that on my phone. I'm going to hit it on the play button in my back pocket every once in a while. So good times. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, everyone. Adios.
Like, share, comment, tell everybody how great it is.